Hello there, I'm Ollie, and this is my world of metal. And today I'm going to be talking about a little festival in the north of Belgium, Samhain Antwerp. I'm going to be talking about my experience at the 2026 edition. I'm going to tell you why I think it's one of the most underrated in the whole of Europe, and why it's one of my favourite festivals in the entire year. It's a smaller festival that brings in around 1,000, 1,200 people, that kind of range, and it features a lot of post, black, doom metal, a bit of death metal, those kind of more niche extreme metal genres. The 2025 edition was absolutely stacked with the likes of Suffocation and Enslaved headlining each of their nights, and it featured a very rare performance from Dragged into Sunlight, which really acts as a statement of intent for the festival. 2026 was equally stacked with the likes of Mysticum, who are actually playing the final ever show as a headliner Saturday. Rotting Christ headlined the Sunday night, and the idea of a band called Rotting Christ headlining Easter Sunday is not lost on me. The likes of Derbyshire Freiheit, Black Braid, Panopticon also joined the lineup, as well as The Body, Full of Hell, Esoteric, and so many more. 2026 took place over Easter weekend, and there was intense competition from the likes of Dark Easter Metal Meeting and Inferno Festival, yet Samhain Antwerp still pulled in a respectable crowd across the weekend. For me, Antwerp's just an absolutely amazing city, and that would win hands down every single time. I mean, just walking around the city, everywhere you look is just a work of art. We got to spend some time at Hetstein Castle, got to see the cathedral, all kinds really, and the food is absolutely exquisite there. There's so many fantastic restaurants. It's just a foodie's paradise, and definitely worth visiting just alone for that. But yeah, this isn't a travel show. This is all about the metal. So I'll be talking about some of my favourite bands of the weekend. The first of which came in the shape of British doom metal legends Esoteric. Now, we were right at the front, and I saw this wall of amplifiers, and I thought, oh, this is going to cause problems. But yeah, they shifted some serious air, but it never felt overwhelming or, too muddy. In fact, those amplifiers brought out the best of this sound. It was really warm, aesthetically pleasing, and inviting. And yeah, these compositions they come up with are just absolutely mind-boggling, like orchestral level kind of complex. I mean, how do they even write a song like that? A little nerdy detail. I noticed that the vocalist kind of had a headset on, like use first line support in IT or something like that. But it meant that he never lost any power or never lost any consistency with the output of his vocals, which are always consistently fierce and heavy. And yeah, they're one of my must-see bands of the weekend, and absolutely fantastic. Now, I had seen Panopticon 2 days prior in London, so I felt quite lucky to get to see them again, and they're absolutely fantastic. They were playing some of the newer material from the last three albums, including one album which hadn't been released. Again, being at the front, I thought it'd be a bit too overwhelming, but it's an absolute onslaught of atmospheric black metal, and I love how they've got quite unique, really, how they've got a keys player and a violin player. He does both jobs, and that adds so much emotional depth to each of the compositions. And yeah, they were just absolutely amazing. That feels like the black metal performance that all bands in the genre should compare themselves to. Forget the terrible photo, but I got to meet Austin Lunn later that night. The creative force and the frontman for Panopticon, and just listening to him talk about the themes that influenced his music and what inspired the lyrics. It was so captivating, and he spoke with so much passion and had this incredible aura about him. I just know I'll never listen to Panopticon in the same way again now. I'll appreciate it on such a deeper level after knowing what the songs represent. Fantastic artist and just an amazing human being. Now, the festival always brings in some of those international heavyweights and really highly acclaimed international acts. But at the same time, they also bring some of the smaller up and coming bands from the Benelux region, one of those being Tajik the Horde. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, they really surprised me. I only really saw them because a friend recommended them. I just love their approach to black metal. Really fast paced, atmospheric, but with elements of hardcore in there. And at such a blistering pace, it's so easy for them just to get one note wrong and the whole thing just becomes atmospheric mess. But they remain consistently tight, and It was a really impressive performance and one of my big discoveries of the weekend. Now, despite all these modern extreme metal bands, those with modern forward-thinking approaches, we got to see one of the bands who really started it all off back in the 1980s and kicked off the whole extreme metal movement. And it was Tommy Warrior Gabriel. Sorry, I've been wanting to do that for a few minutes now. But yeah, his band Triumph of Death played songs from Hellhammer, a band he started way back in 1982. A band that were formed before I was born and probably before a lot of people at the festival were even conceived. So yeah, honestly, it felt like a real privilege to see one of the seminal acts in the genre. It was back to basics, primitive extreme metal. Huge amplifiers, attitude, and just really solid riffs, and it got a good pick going. I think I even saw a crowd surfer at one point, and they were highly appreciated. Now, let's face it, festivals are getting harder on us as we get older. I'm in my mid 30s, and at this point, I needed to take a break. So I did that. Yeah, I noticed that from the year previous, there were some little improvements. In the outside area, there was a nice canopy that protected us from the elements. It rained on the Sunday, so we definitely appreciated it then. There was more food vendors, but also just the vibes of the festival. I noticed there was this, really strong international community. People come all over Europe for this and even further, like from the north of Africa in some instances, as well as a lot of people from Britain, like myself, from the UK. And yeah, I noticed the promoter, Ben Butels, he was on hand and he was genuinely interested in people's experience and he was on hand and very visible. And that's something you just don't get from from the bigger festivals. And yeah, it's a nice touch, really. And that's one of the reasons I really began to appreciate Samhain Antwerp on a deeper level this weekend. Now, quite a bittersweet moment because I'd never seen Mr. Come, but I knew this was going to be the final ever show as they closed out the main stage on that Saturday night. And I don't really like bands that don't have drummers, but it really works for Mr. Come. It adds this really cool industrial spice to black metal, and the sound was absolutely flawless. The mix was perfect, and the visual display was absolutely amazing. It against bittersweet because it was the first time I saw them, and I know I'll never see them again. And the place was packed out, and I've got a feeling that Mr. Come are definitely going to be missed. Now, my night ended on the Saturday on the second stage. I didn't go there too often over the weekend, but I really wanted to see Hulda. I caught them in Manchester about 18 months prior, in the back end of 2024, and I was a bit disappointed at that particular night because, well, it didn't sound very good, to be brutally honest. And on that night in Manchester, the fire alarm went off about 45 minutes into the set, and yeah, they cut the set short, and that was it. Yeah, it sounded so much better tonight. And I noticed during the sound check that they were very particular about details. And if you're going to be like that, if you're going to be that fussy, really, you've got to make it count. You've got to, sound good, and they really did. It's got a very old school black metal feel, but with modern production. At the request of many, there was an after party, but at this point, it was gone midnight, far too late, and us old todgers went home and rested up for the next day. I wanted to see Wolven Nest for quite a while, and they were supposed to play in Manchester in early 2024, but that show was cancelled. So this was, I guess, a bit of a chance for redemption, really. And yeah, I was right at the front, and I noticed they had these candles and incense sticks. It provides some olfactory stimulation, which is something bands don't really do. Something quite unique. It started off pretty slow, quite slow, but eventually it became this really cool psychedelic spiced, gothic doom metal mix, and yeah, just a raging inferno. The tension slowly built, the dynamics increased, things got faster and more intense, and I think the peak of the set was one of their best songs, "Ritual Lovers." Now, I saw Der Veganer of Freiheit in 2024, and that was my first time. I was really excited for it, but on that particular day, they had an awful sound mix, and it was just didn't live up to my expectations. So this was the second time I'd seen them at Samhain Antwerp, Every band on the main stage sounded fantastic up to this point, and Der Veganer Freiheit also sounded amazing that day. I mean, they got a very complex avant-garde style of black metal, and sound engineers really need to know what they're doing to get the best out of them. One bad mix can just become atmospheric gloop. But they played songs from Inern, mostly from Inern, as that was their album in 2025. It was one of the best albums of that year, especially in the black metal genre. And they also, well, the second to last song was Aufbruch. I hope I pronounced that right, Aufbruch. And yeah, that is arguably their magnum opus. It's a song they always finish the set with. It's a blistering, intense 10-minute black metal song. But they didn't close that this time. They finished with Forlorn. As far as I'm aware, one of the only songs that they actually play in English. And yeah, it's just an emotional roller coaster. And I remember one of my friends actually, he was visibly weeping at that song because it's just emotionally charged and just dripping with raw sentiment. It's it's an amazing set. It was a good song to finish on, and yeah, I was really impressed and made me really excited to see Devagana Freiheit once again. Now, Black Braid are one of the hottest properties in the world of black metal, one of the most popular bands, and on this weekend they were arguably one of the biggest draws. People were camping out at the barrier even during the sound check, and yeah, it's easy to see why because they've got this pretty unique gimmick. Well, it's not really a gimmick because they really lean into the Native American roots in their songs. The lyrics tackle themes of Native American folklore and mythology. Yeah, they've got some pretty unique compositions. It's a very high energy set, a very intense, fast paced, thrash style of black metal. And yeah, the mix was absolutely on point that day. And yeah, it's kind of sad I had to leave a bit early because I wanted to get myself a good spot for the next band, the band who are headlining the second stage. Now, I've seen Bellwitch, I've seen Stitch and Bow, I've seen some very loud bands over the years, but I don't think anything compared to the Body this weekend. I mean, I don't know how to describe it really. I mean, just looking at the setup, it looks really simple. Very simple drum kit, a guitar with two amplifiers and three pedals. I mean, my friend was saying, the loudest band you could ever see, and they questioned that. But when I was at the front, it just felt like standing next to an airplane as it's about to take off in the middle of a thunderstorm during an earthquake. That's a weird analogy, but it's the only thing I can come up with to try and describe what seeing the Body live was like. Ah, I mean, yeah, they were the surprise package of the weekend. I didn't really know what to expect, but it was a physical sensation as much as a musical or auditory experience. And yeah, it- yeah. Next up, it was the final band of the weekend, Rotting Christ, and I've seen them a few times. They've always been amazing, and this was actually the band that forced me to make my way to Belgium for the weekend. I was kind of on the fence, but when I saw Rotting Christ were announced, that was the one that made me book my flights to Belgium. And yeah, they always sound amazing, and tonight was no exception. They've always got this larger than life, thunderous sound up there. They've always got a very engaging live show as well. All this that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's very easy to join in on the lyrics and sort of vocal chants to have. Got some blistering guitar leads. It's heavy as hell, but quite inviting and melodic at the same time. And yeah, it was bittersweet because I felt like the festival had only just started and I didn't really want it to end, but yeah, it had to come to an end, I guess. And yeah, it was a great way to round out the weekend. So there we go. That was Samhain Antwerp 2026. Curated really well by Ben, who is just a fantastic promoter, and he's built something really special here. And something I didn't really talk about, but you know, it's quite relaxed and less frantic than the bigger festivals. Like I said at the start of the video, it's around about 1,000 people, so it's not as claustrophobic as, say, the big. I'm not going to shame any festivals, but my point is, it's a lot more accessible, a lot easier, and the fact that there's only 5 bands on the main stage over the weekend on each day. It could have easily crammed in a sixth band, but You decided to keep 10-minute changes between stages, so it's a bit more relaxed and less frantic. Also, it means that the bands get longer sets and you get to really understand the band and get to know them on a deeper level when you get to play the full discography. Well, not the full discography, but get to play the best music and really showcase themselves rather than having to cram everything into like 30, 20-minute sets. Yeah, it's just a fantastic festival that takes place in a world class city, one you've definitely got to visit. And Samhain Antwerp just it's got to be done.